Hello everybody, and of course I would love first of all to thank the organizers for having me here, and I would love to say in one word how enriching it is to be here, to hear all of you, those that we can hear, and here I'm also to talk about what's going on in my country and how come that photography has become kind of form of real, very efficient activism now, yeah, I would start with the fact that there is no doubt actually photography in Georgia is the most popular art. I would say even kind of dominant art on the cultural scene of Georgian cultural scene of the second decade of 21st century. And of course it doesn't happen by chance. And of course I can't not profit of this occasion and not to talk in few words how it happened, because you might be not listening every day presentations, speeches, lectures, conferences about what's the history or what's the history and tradition of photography in Georgia. But there is something. Images, but there is very important thing, the location of country, because it's located on the crossroads of Asia and Europe, always defined one very interesting reality for Georgia, that all the cultural inventions or other inventions, they were arriving and reaching country very fast. And that was not also excluded for photography. Another thing is that as we're talking about women, my experience, life experience is that it's always very efficient to talk about women by starting talking about men. So it doesn't work, but maybe this way. Yeah, so. Yeah, starting by men, and it's just to say that as for example the cinema that reached Georgia just 1 year later after the Parisian premiere, so it happened in 1896 November. In Tbilisi was first cinema projection. That was a huge thing. Even not a year later after Paris premiere, photography also arrives very, very quickly in Georgia. Just a few years later, and we have the first paper announcing this strange about some foreigner practicing this strange innovation in the country. So the history, of course, so here are already women coming, so you see they are also very, very impressive. The history of development of photography in Georgia is very, very interesting, very rich. There are a lot of similarities with the European, of course, European style of how photography was developing. I can't not to show you these images, because it's one of these rare maybe occasions you might have as colleagues, professionals, to have a look what it was, because there was a big history, because a bit before we arrive to the, let's say, new wave of photography in Georgia. This is the very beginning, and of course, as in France, England, Germany, big European countries, in Georgia also, the main avenues in the capitals are full of studios, and Georgians are happy without really understanding what it was to getting the portraits of themselves. They were heading to the photo studios, and it's also to say that the heritage of Georgian photography heritage is extremely rich, and there are only 15,000 images kept in the National Museum archives, 3,000 stereo photographs kept in the National Museum archives, and of course these are for example scenes in traditional baths. yeah, by Alexander Onyeshvili, which is considered as a pioneer of Georgian photography. And of course, this heritage still needs to be discovered by the professionals from all over the world. And of course, also, as in Europe, photography has become in Georgia as well the perfect medium of modernity, following and documenting quickly changing reality that was the result of big economical changes that took place in Georgia in the second half of 19th century. So here are some images of how photography was following the construction of railway road all over the country, and so on. But of course, but of course, the new wave of photography in Georgia starts with the new reality and new opportunities for cultural development in South Caucasus region. Started in early 90s of 20th century, right after the collapse of Soviet Union, and regained independence for the countries Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Three of them are part of South Caucasus region. And the major political, economical, and social changes defined cultural scene in almost all ex-Soviet republics, including Georgia, of course. Photography becomes the dominant art at that period. Photography becomes the dominant art on the scene of contemporary art and the most popular medium of modernity, enabling to document quickly and radically changing reality in order to better understand it, to reflect on it, to express it, of course. So the new wave in the history of photography in Georgia starts in 90s of 20th century, just after the end of USSR. In the societies that are in transition from authoritarian regime to democratic values, which is also the case of Georgia. And they're trying to position themselves as young democracies. The medium of photography has been used as let's say, the most powerful tool of storytelling, not only by professionals of visual culture and journalists, but also by numerous non-governmental organizations working on human rights. I'm showing these images from the festival, let's say these are archives of Tbilisi Photo Festival that I represent, just to make an impression how big is our audience, because that has this kind of crucial element in how come that we're using photography as a real tool for activism, defending social issues. That was the I wanted to give you this statement. So as known, the medium of photography makes possible to support, to affirm, and to advocate human rights in societies all over the world. And documentary photography, as well as visual storytelling, can vividly show a devastating impact of human rights violation on societies, bringing the full force of artistic expression and power of documentary photography, makes possible to promote the human rights and the social justice issues, what we are doing almost on everyday basis for almost 25 years after the collapse of Soviet Union. Today more than ever, so that's why it's so important for us that today more than ever, society's awareness of their freedoms and rights becomes crucial for further democratic development and social changes that we still need, of course. In this sense, once again, I would say that on this stage, photography, especially in countries like Georgia, in societies like Georgia, has differently, but has one more time in its history become kind of perfect medium of modernity. A medium that our modernity needs so much now. because it has become a medium of changes, also kind of catalyst of big social changes, needed changes in these societies that are still fighting for the democratic development. As medium photography plays a real role, has a real function, and is an efficient tool for social changes that need first of all to document the human conditions, to document the violation of human rights, to help denouncing it, and to help to raise awareness. That's the role that plays actually photography. This in this presentation, of course, I'll be focusing mostly on documentary part. It's very hard to put all together in 20 minutes presentation, but just know that this is a very small part that I took to respond to the title and to the idea, main punchline of the presentation today. So that's exactly the role that plays photography in modern Georgian society too. This is also the case in the whole South Caucasian region. So the photography nowadays is not only the most popular art on the scene of contemporary art, but also a real efficient tool that civil society uses and gets real results. Despite the huge progress and changes in the post-Soviet societies of South Caucasus, including Georgia, the need of advocating and promoting the human rights by all possible means is still huge, because the need of the social changes is huge. The gender issues are among the most challenging social issues in Georgia, as well as in the whole region of South Caucasus, so in Azerbaijan and in Armenia also. And there is of course like the very, very basic reason for that, because the societies in these countries, they are constructed on a very traditional, let's say, hierarchic understanding of role of man, woman, and so on. In modern Georgian society, the women still need to fight for their basic rights, even if the progress is evident too. Of course, women are active. They practice, of course they work, they practice their rights to choose the way they want to live, they want to work and organize their social activities, their social life or their private life. Women get support, and that's true, it's changing a lot for last years in Georgia. Women are getting huge support from numerous non-governmental organizations that are working on defending their rights. And gender issues in general. Despite visible progress, the scale of violence against women in Georgia has also become a concern. Since 2014, for example, the increasing number of femicides committed by husbands and partners and other forms of domestic violence has become alarming for NGOs focusing on human rights, and even government was disturbed. The new wave of the development of the medium of photography in Georgia is marked by the extraordinary activity of women photographers. In Georgia, as well as in Azerbaijan and in Armenia, the female photographers are the most active ones. The activity of women photographers is also remarkable in Iran, as you might know, a country that is considerably outstripped the Georgia and the other South Caucasian countries by the human rights violation, including women's rights. But still, it's an incredibly active female photographer scene in Iran. Since the end of the first decade of 21st century, the new generation of Georgian women photographers has positioned themselves as photographers that focus mainly on documenting or covering the most challenging social issues. At the same time, I can't stop. There are a lot of things I want to say. I can't stop on the story that, for example, that I'm showing. But there were like explanations, and I will be trying to add a few words. But now you see the work of Anka Gudjabidze, who is one of the emerging documentary photographers, female photographers in Georgia, focusing a lot on LGBT community. Yes, strangely among emerging photographers that work on long-term projects depicting the diverse social issues, the women represent majority not only in Georgia but in the whole South Caucasus. The statistics makes that evidence. They not only document and report the violation cases for the stories, but also are focusing on long-term projects in order to explore in depth the most challenging social issues. Justina Manikiewicz, who is Georgian-based Polish photographer, is not at all emerging photographer. She is an established photographer, but she's one of the very active ones. So I cared about like showing a few images of her long-term project Famine that she worked on in Ukraine for a few years. I guess you know about this movement, women using their body to protest against social or even very, very important political issues. Women photographers, there is an interesting tendency in the whole South Caucasus. When women photographers are, of course, getting together, are organizing collectives, small agencies to work together, to be able to strengthen their, like, to consolidate their efforts and try to give like more results. We don't have to forget also that all the stories that I'm showing, because I want you also to see images and not only hear my presentation, which is like, I would say, like a kind of, public defender's speech mostly about human rights violations, but it's important for you to understand what's the general picture in country is. Most of the story, all the stories, not most, but all the stories that you see and the images, they are of course published, they are shown, they are discussed. That's the important thing. And why I wanted also, I cared about like showing how huge is the public of photography, audience of photography. Here's the connection, because when photographers are able to show this to this like thousands of young or not young people who are eager to see and to understand what are the topics they are working at, that at least we get the awareness rising, at least. But there are also like another actions that follow. So going back to collectives, which is very important now on the photographic stage in South Caucasus, in Georgia, in Armenia, especially Azerbaijan, a little bit less. But there is, I would love to mention 4+ collective, which is female photographers collective in Armenia, founded a few years ago by Nazik Armenakian, Anahit Hayrapetian, and Anush Babajanian. Very active. They are all of them very active photojournalists, and mostly, if not entirely, focused on gender issues, and I would even say the women's rights violation issues, and even violence, domestic or other kind of violence against women. The story that you see now that was published by National Geographic is produced by Daura Sulagawi, who is a young, very talented, interested Georgian photojournalist. She's part of another very active collective, Error Images. There are 4 young female photojournalists, Dara Sulagauri, Anka Bujabidze, whose story on Bianca, transgender woman, you have seen just before, as well as Tagoro Bakidze, you see her images now, and Nada Sopromadze. They created agency 2 years ago. They are producing work. They are very brave. They find grants. They continue. They continue and they work on their personal long-term projects. For example, Tagoro Bakidze worked in Pankisi Gorge, which is a rather difficult and complicated region of Georgia on the border with Chechnya, which is North Caucasian Republic, part of Russia. And there is a big community of Chechen refugees that installed in Pankisi Gorge after the Second War, Chechen War. And so here are there is a video that I can't show you, but the women photographers work, including Tagoro Bakidze work, actually a lot also on refugees issues. There are around 400,000 IDPs, not refugees, but IDPs in Georgia, issue of several wars. Gender issues, violence against women, the precocity of the LGBT community in the modern Georgian society, early marriages. Here is just a small list of issues that are covered by the group of actively working women photographers. The international practice of active collaboration between NGOs, non-governmental organizations advocating the human rights and the photographers has been widely developed in Georgia too. For example, UN Women Georgia, UNDP, UNFPA Georgia has launched few projects in collaboration with young Georgian female photographers. Strangely, they want to work only with female photographers, as it's not by chance, of course, because as I mentioned before, all the social issues in Georgia, in Armenia, also a little less in Azerbaijan, are covered mostly by women photographers. The result of this collaboration is some of the remarkable projects that have been exhibited, shown largely, and discussed too, of course. This project helped to raise awareness on issues that photographers work on. And just in a few seconds and few words, Tbilisi Photo Festival is an international photography festival that was created in 2010, and it has never been thought and imagined as a festival just to have a festival and to make exhibitions, but to become a platform where we can communicate through photography and by the medium of photography on challenging and important issues that we consider crucial, not only locally, but also on the local stage, but also on the international stage. So since 2013, Tbilisi Photo Festival has launched kind of big series of debates, roundtables, exhibitions, discussions, projections, workshops, where we gather with female photographers of regional scale, local of course, regional, but also international. And that's an extremely important part of our activities. And this is also important part for, as we understood through all the events that we could organize, this is extremely important for female photographers, hearing their voices and giving them opportunity to share their not only working experience but also their emotional experience, because often they are going through big tests, let's say. Being women and working on very challenging issues is not easy task in South Caucasus, in Georgia, in Azerbaijan, in Armenia. So that's I think all I wanted to say.